The news that we have long been waiting for came on Monday, 22nd of November 2021, when the Australian government announced that fully vaccinated international students will be welcomed back to Australia from Wednesday, 1st of December 2021. Let's discuss about the prerequisites or requirements for Australian travelling for international students. Before to travel Australia, students need to fulfill the following conditions. Number 1, be fully vaccinated with the complete dose of vaccine approved or recognized by the Australian Therapeutic Goods and Administration. Number 2, hold a valid visa for one of the eligible visa subclass. I'm gonna leave the link below for your visa subclass. Number 3, provide a proof of their vaccination status. Number 4, present a negative COVID-19 PCR test, and test must be taken within 3 days of your departure date. So let's talk about approved. What are the approved vaccination in Australia? Number 1 is Pfizer. Number 2, AstraZeneca. Number 3, Moderna. Number 4, Janssen. These are the vaccines which have been approved by the Australian government to travel in Australia for all international. So you must have one of these vaccinations before you travel to Australia. Now, which are the non-quarantine territories in Australia? Number 1 is Canberra, number 2 is Victoria, and number 3 is New South Wales, NSW. If you arrive in NSW from overseas and you are not fully vaccinated, you must go into quarantine for at least 14 days before continuing your journey to another state or territory. After this isolation period, you can transit domestically and travel home. Let's find out mandatory quarantine territories in Australia. Quarantine requirements in Australia are determined by the state and territory governments. Queensland, 14 days of mandatory quarantine at the government mentioned hotel is mandatory. I am leaving the link in my description to know or to find out about more how you have to do quarantine in Queensland. South Australia, all people planning to travel to South Australia from interstate and overseas, including returning South Australian, must apply through entry check essay. I'm leaving the entry check link in my description. You can travel to South Australia from overseas if you have completed a course of COVID-19 vaccine approved or recognized by the TGA. You must have evidence of negative 19 test received within the 72 hours prior to your arrival. On arrival to South Australia, you must quarantine for 7 days using the Health Check SA app. Get a COVID-19 test within 24 hours of arrival in South Australia. Get tested again on a day 6 and on a day 14 after arrival. Complete daily symptoms check for 14 days after arrival by using healthcheck.sa application. Not enter at high risk setting for 14 days after arrival. Not attend a COVID management plan event for 14 days after arrival. If you have been overseas in last 7 days, and you will be required to comply with the obey entry condition on arrival to South Australia. They applies if you enter South Australia from any other state or territory. If you have not completed a course of COVID-19 vaccine approved or recognized by TGA, for example, had a 1 dose of 2 doses courses, you will be classified as an unvaccinated traveler. So you have to quarantine for 14 days. Unvaccinated traveler in South Australia, if you have unvaccinated, you do not have approved medical exemption, you are not permitted to travel to South Australia. So I am leaving the link below for unvaccinated people to enter in South Australia. Please follow the link. Western Australia, I am leaving the link below in my description for the detailed information. Before you travel to, all international arrivals need to complete a G2G pass declaration to enter Western Australia. This must be a complete and submitted prior to travel. You should also download G2G app before you travel, and G2G is now available for mobile application that enable you easily a complete virtual quarantine check-in when promoted. Passenger traveling to Australia must provide a proof of negative COVID-19 PCR test the test result at the time of check-in when you check into Australia, and PCR test must have been taken 72 hours or less prior to departure on Australia. On arrival to Western Australia, you must complete 14 days of hotel quarantine upon arrival in Western Australia at the government approved hotel facility at your own expense. You will be subject to mandatory COVID-19 tests on the following days. On the day you will be arrive in Western Australia, on a day of 5th of quarantine, on a day of 13 of quarantine, on a day of 17 after you left the quarantine, or on a day of 21 after you left the quarantine. If you are direct international arrival, you will not be permitted to travel domestically or continue on a domestic connection until you have complete your 14 days for mandatory quarantine in Western Australia. Then you can do whatever you want to do. Tasmania border entry condition depends on where each traveler has spent their time prior to the day of arrival. I am leaving the link below in description for the more details. Traveling directly to Tasmania from overseas traveler who have been overseas over than low risk area in New Zealand or other approved Australian divisions to traveler, or on a cruise ship in the 14 days period in arriving to Tasmania must quarantine for 14 days on arrival in Tasmania, which means if you spend that time outside of the Tasmania or outside of the Australia except the approved territory by the government or the Australian government, you have to do a mandatory quarantine no matter from where you are traveling. Overseas arrival must be fully vaccinated and also have 2 COVID tests while in quarantine. First, that you will occur within 48 hours of arrival you have to do, and second, you will be soon after of day of 12 of quarantine. After 12 days of quarantine you have to do. Traveler who have spent time overseas for other than low risk areas like in New Zealand or cruise ship for 14 days prior arriving to Tasmania required pre-approval from the Deputy State of Controller to enter in Tasmania, which means government approved territory students or the travelers can travel to Australia, but they have to get the permission. The most effective way of seeking this pre-approval is make a G2G pass submission under the category 8 other person or classes of the person approved by the Deputy State of Controller. Well, that's it for today. I hope you like this video. If you have any confusion and query, please feel free to leave a comment below. Like always, happy learning from my side.